Lalama, correspondent on ABC's 2020. You may have also seen her on Hard Copy, America's Most Wanted headline news. She's worked here in Los Angeles as a reporter and anchor. Gosh, I'm just thrilled to have you, Ms. Pat Lalama. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Grazie, grazie. Anytime that I can pay homage to my Italian roots, I'm there. And of course, I love you. So here I am.
Yeah, it's like a double win, right?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful.
And we wore the same. I didn't get your memo, but I put on the same color. So kindred spirits.
Doesn't that always happen with friends? You show up with the same dress, same color, same hair color, whatever it is, but one way or another. First, I just want to start very briefly about your career, because you've had an incredibly esteemed career in broadcasting. Not always easy in the early days when there really weren't a lot of women out there, right?
Well, here's the thing. So I worked my way through college at the Ohio State University, and I knew I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. I used to steal my dad Nunzio's newspaper and take it upstairs and set up a tape recorder and turn on a lamp and read and enunciate and learn to project properly so that I would sound like a broadcaster. People don't sound like broadcasters anymore. That's a lost art. It's the Ted Baxter thing. But it was very important because I swear to God, a lot of hearing impaired people would write to me and say, thank you for enunciating. I can read your lips. Isn't that incredible? So, anyway, after right before I graduated from the Ohio State University, I found out that the local radio station in Columbus, Ohio, which is a fairly big market at 30 something, even back in the 70s, was looking for a cub reporter. And the man who interviewed me, and I'm still friends with him today, was a news director named Tom Rizzo. How about that?
Another Italian. Yeah,
so he hired me to be this cub radio, and I did afternoon drive radio. It's 53 degrees in the capital city for WNCI News. I'm Pat Lalama. So I did 5 years of radio, which is such a great training ground for television because you learn to hustle. But when he hired me, and I'm just like I haven't even graduated from college yet, but he hired me to give me a shot. And I said, okay, Tom, thank you, Mr. Rizzo. But I'm going to tell you one thing. And he said, what? I said, I don't do chick stories. And this was like 1977, right? Wow. And he said, what do you mean? I said, no offense, but back at the time, Jane Fonda's workout was all that kind of stuff. And that's what the women did. The handful of women who were in TV news or radio did, female centric stories. And I said, I'm not right now, as I start my career, I'm not going to fall into that trap. And he said, okay, then write up something that tells me what you want to do. And I wrote up a whole thing about politics and criminal justice. And now, that's not to say that in all the years I did local news in Boston, Chicago, and LA, that there wasn't the time where I got sent out to do somebody's 100th birthday party at Disney. And that's fine. I love to have fun and to do the light stuff as well. But I did not want to establish myself as a softie. I wanted to be as hard as the guys. And in the field, I have sworn at the guys who've tried to belittle me and,
Pat,
never assaulted anyone, but I made it hard on them if they dared to try to cut me down.
You and I are very similar in that way. Mm-hmm. I would be out on stories where I'd have to ask, who are you wearing? I don't mind that. And by the way, covering the Oscars is really a highlight.
I covered the Oscars.
Career.
I did that.
But you know what I...
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been there and I'm like, okay, I'll do this, but I got to have some meat. You got to send me on the street with the people, because I wanted
my reputation to be rooted in hardcore journalism, but also the ability to have fun. I mean, I covered the '86 Super Bowl. I love sports. I interviewed Walter Payton. I interviewed so many, big sports stars and John Madden in my career. So I wanted to have fun. I love rock and roll, as you know, but I just wanted the reputation always to be, she's hardcore, but she's really edgy on the side. So,
yeah, no, you really are. And sometimes I think a little bit of that comes from, first of all, who we are as people, but also a little bit of our Italian upbringing, right? I mean, girl, you got to be tough to be raised in some Italian households. I know you had to be in mine. There were lots of people around, lots of food around. You absolutely had to make your way through. Otherwise, you were just sort of on the sidelines looking in. Let's back it up a little bit. To you as a kid, you said you grew up in Ohio.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your dad, your mom, and
Yeah.
all of it to help make Pat who Pat is today.
Well, let me see if I can just pull up this picture I showed you a second ago.
Okay.
Yes. So is it, I'm not a techno person at all, but I'm just going to try this. So can you make out that big ship? Can you make
I
out?
can.
That is
Yeah.
the ship that carried my family from Italy to these here blessed United States of America. And both my parents are of Italian heritage. So my dad, the story goes that my grandmother was pregnant with him on the boat. I've never been able to confirm that. But my dad's family, the Lalamas, which means the blade in Italian.
Oh.
I think that's rather apropos for my personality, don't you think? So,
yeah.
so they were from Abruzzo and a town called Pacentro, although my cousin Johnny says it's a different town, but it's in the same region. They actually went there, so I'm going to defer to him. But then they came to Ellis Island, then stopped in Pennsylvania, lived there. My grandfather worked in the coal mines, whole thing, dirt poor. People weren't all that crazy about Italians at the time, honestly. And then they ended up in Columbus, Ohio. My mother's family, the Giorgionis, are from Venice. This, according to my mother, is our ancestor, who is a very famous Renaissance painter from Venice, and he has paintings all over Venice and in the Louvre. So,
wow,
my mother's family would think of my father's family as the Italian hillbillies. But anyway, so they came through Ellis Island to Cleveland, and then came to Columbus. So Patrizia and Maria Lalama and my three brothers were all born in Columbus, Ohio.
Wow, what were you like as a kid? And what was it like? What was it? Okay, go ahead.
Very sensitive. Actually, not like I am today. So I'm going to be really honest with you. I was skinny, insecure, and bullied. And I'm happy to talk about that, because I think bullying is the scourge of the world. But a lot of girls used to just pick on me and pushed me around and made fun of me, said I'd never be anything. It's sort of like the Janis Joplin thing, right? So I turned out, and the greatest part of this story is that I started getting mouthy. I wanted to fight back. There was something in me, and I think that was my dad Nunzio. Because remember, my dad Nunzio, when I was only 16 back in the 70s, took me aside and he goes, "I'm going to tell you two things," right? I said, "What?" He said, "Number one, you pick a career that you love. You look in the mirror and you go, I'm really happy I'm going to work today. I love where I'm going, because nothing else matters in your career, not money, not anything. And number two, never, ever count on a man to pay your bills." How forward thinking was that for, an Italian guy in the 70s in the concrete business with very little education? But my dad, and he's still alive, he's 93. He was so forward thinking, and he has told members of my family that he saw something in me, not my three brothers, God bless them, he loved them too, but he just knew, and he really encouraged me, and I did everything on my own all my life. But anyway, I didn't have like the ballsiness when I was really young. But as I got into high school, I was like a rebel, and I was considered a hippie, and I wrote all these controversial articles for the school newspaper and ruffled people's feathers, and all the cheerleaders couldn't stand me, and they used to make fun of me. And then in my junior and senior year, I got voted onto the homecoming court by the masses, which was a big F you, excuse my English. And the cheerleaders were like, what? But it was because I was nice to people and I related to people, and I was like a populist, right? The people liked me. The famous ones didn't. And then I realized I had some authority with my voice, by starting to fight back. And I'll never forget, a few years ago, my mother there was this one girl her name's Karen, I'm not going to say her last name, from high school, who used to be the meanest of the mean. And so she runs into my mom about 15 years ago in a grocery store in Columbus. She goes, "Oh, we're all so proud of Patty. She was just so delightful in high school." And my mother told me this. And I said, "Next time you see her, tell her to drop dead."
Oh my God. Wow. So
anyway, then I just kind of blossomed, and I was a rock and roller, and I was not afraid to speak up. And I will say that I'm a little bit confrontational and probably overly defensive, but it's worked for me, baby.
So look, you can't last in this business if you're not, and you know that. Plus, I mean, you are a boots on the ground journalist. No bullshit gets past you, right? It's like, and I understand when you say you were sort of really a little quiet as a kid. We were ones at my cousins in New Jersey, right? Because I raised my 3 sons out here. So we didn't have a lot of family, which was really difficult because we all know that being Italian is about family, right? So we go back.
Poker on Christmas Eve. Anyway, go ahead.
Absolutely. No. Yeah. So my kids would say, how do you remember their names? Like, just on any given Sunday, we'll get together when my kids come, maybe 70, 80 people come. They're like, you grew up with these people? I'm like, yes. But having said that, they would say, what was my mom like? Because, they know me as who I am now. I can be vocal, to say the least, and they'll tell you very vocal. But they would say, quiet. They would look and say, that's impossible. And here's why I think you were quiet and I was quiet. I think we were just sort of observing people, because one of the best traits, I think, as a journalist, you've got to observe people. You've got to read them. You've got to see them. And then you make your move. And then you make your move, right? I mean, I've covered so many people like you have, one being Donald Trump, very, very early on in my career. And I was one of the first people in Atlantic City, New Jersey. In fact, I was working with a friend of ours, Anna Garcia. We were all working down there together.
Well, Anna Garcia and I worked at Crime Watch Daily together when I was the managing editor there. Anna and I go way back. Go ahead.
Right. But if you can't sit there and sort of figure out what somebody's doing and then challenge them on it, what good are you as a reporter? But
but nobody's challenging anybody today. Do you notice that? I mean, I know you probably don't want to get into politics, but I don't hear any questions challenging the BS that's going on. So there, I said it.
I don't really want to get into politics, but you're right. And you know that I come from a very political family with my husband and whatnot. And that's what he covers all day is politics and what's going on.
And I listen to him religiously.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that because I think he's one of the only people out there. Again, this is not about his show or politics, but as an aside, who's really talking about left, right, center. What's going wrong here?
Well, that's why I listen, because, he'll rip the crap out of anybody if he feels that they are abusing power or, I mean, that's what I love about him. It's an across the board hit if he needs it to be that. So
I'll tell you, I will as well as a journalist, but having worked back east and having worked here, there's a little less of that going on in LA. There's a little more of the nicey nice. And I think
have you watched the White House briefing? I mean, seriously. Seriously.
No, I know.
We all know what it's about. Let's not, I don't want to, God knows I could ruin my career if I go any further. So
no. So let's get back to being Italian, because that's the fun stuff. So Nunzio said that to you, and he really, I think that moment gave you guts, but it wasn't always easy for you, right? Because Nunzio also left the family when you were a teenager.
Yes.
And and mom was raising 4 kids on her own. So that's not so easy, right?
So my 3 of my brothers, 2 of my 3 brothers. Okay, so my brother, myself, and my 2 brothers just above me and just below me were grown. We're not grown, but we were older. And but it was my youngest brother who really probably suffered the most. And I told my father when he left the family that I didn't blame him. There was a lot of stuff going on in my family. I could understand. Look, my parents were very Italian in that they went right from their homes to marriage. My mother was 18, when she married my dad. They had no business being married. Let's face it. That's just what you did back then. And I do remember very happy times with them, But as I got older, there were cracks, on both sides. There was, a lot of drama. And I didn't blame my dad. I didn't care what the Catholic Church said about you have to stay married forever. What a bunch of crap. Okay. Sorry, Catholics, but what a bunch of crap. Kids are better when their parents are happy. And my dad worked his butt off all his life, and he felt cheated. He had to quit school in the 7th grade. You know how that was with the Italians. You didn't survive. And my dad was a genius. And I think he felt robbed, that he and he put in his time. And by the way, he just didn't abandon my mom willy-nilly. There were good reasons. Sorry, Mom. She's half. but I said to him, I don't blame you. I want you to have happiness. And he met a woman that he's still married to today. I mean, it must be like 35 something years now. He stuck with her. He really loved her. That I didn't mind. What I minded was that somehow his toughness was completely evaporated when he looked at all of us and said, sorry, I kind of have to go to this place with her family. And we're like, excuse me?
Wow.
Well, that happens more than you know. That happens a lot, where for some, and I can't blame his wife. I blame him for not saying, you don't tell me that I don't see my kids. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's a lot of heartache. It's sad for you. It must have been very difficult on mom, regardless of what she was going through and how she acted out. That's really difficult because she probably had nowhere to turn and just felt a little bit scared, right? But that's also can be a very common story in Italian families and marriages, and sort of people don't talk about.
Well, listen, let me just tell you, I have to give my mother credit because my mother was a survivor. She immediately, she got a job she hadn't worked in 25 years. And she got a job immediately. She worked forever. She worked at a law firm. She learned to be a paralegal. She dated 5 million guys. She was a tough cookie. So I have to give her credit too for survival, her ability to survive. And she did. And she met the greatest guy, my stepdad.
Who wonderful.
Who I just adore. He's in Houston. He's from Syria. Believe it or not. So she took a whole left turn there, but he's lovely. I love him.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Maybe at the end of our interview, if there's time, we can call Nunzio and say hi to him. Wouldn't that be cool? Would he pick up?
Yeah, nah. No, not a good idea. Not a good idea. My husband, rest in peace, called him one day and read him the riot act and said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And, my dad said, oh yeah, I'll call her. Everything's fine. But he never did. And then my husband called him again and said, you said you were going to call Patty. And that didn't end well. But listen, I mean, there's a lot of dynamics that I really don't want to reveal here, not because I'm afraid, not because I don't want to. I think all people should hear people's backstory of trials and tribulations because it helps you grow. But, she may sue me.
Yeah, no, we don't want that. Let's talk about some of the fun stuff that you do remember from growing up Italian, whether it's the food. I know you don't cook. I get it. I'm not America's greatest cook either. It's got to be something about, I don't know.
I make, after Mass on Sundays, my father and I used to go to Carfagna's Italian market, which was there were a lot of Italian markets in Columbus. Columbus and Cleveland are very Italian cities. Very. Not LA, unfortunately. But we'd go
No, wait. No, I'm going to stop you. It's here. We have an
you're going to have to introduce me because I have been... the Italian festival, the San Gennaro, I actually spoke at the first one. And it was so much fun and the entertainment was great. And now what has happened to the Italian festival in LA?
No, I will tell you. The issue with LA, there's some really terrific people, many of them in LA as Italians. It's just that we're spread out in Los Angeles. So you've got something up maybe in San Gabriel. You've got something up here in Los Angeles, West Los Angeles, down in the South Bay.
I get that, but it would be nice. Like I said, I remember that first and maybe the second year, because my husband and I went every year. First and second, it was packed. And like Bobby Darin's son was there, and Frank Stallone, who is an old friend of ours, and a lot of great acts, and the food was great. But now it's like this, you walk up, you walk down, it's over. There's nothing. I don't know, but I'm sorry.
No. It's here, and we'll talk about it after because I'm actually proud of all the work that the different Italian groups are doing here in Los Angeles.
Well, then you need to fill me in. I'd like to get involved. I want to get involved.
Oh gosh, imagine the two of us walking in the room. They're all going to leave.
Why not?
I'm just kidding. Anyway, so okay, let's go back to that. So we're talking about the markets in Columbus.
Oh yeah. So my dad we'd go and the salami and the provolone and the capicola, all of it hanging everywhere, and the bread, and we'd go back and course, you had Sunday dinner at Nono's house after Mass.
Always.
And the Italian wedding soup, which is do you know Italian wedding soup?
Please. I had it at my wedding. That's how well I know Italian wedding soup. My parents made it. They were phenomenal cooks. Edith and Tony should have had a restaurant. They were amazing. And we would have called it, wait, you want to know what we would have called it? Pots and pans a bangin'. Because those, and not because they were banging anything. They were banging the pots and pans. Okay. Yeah. And it was the loudest experience you could ever imagine. My kids still have memories of loud times on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. And they'd run downstairs after, opening their gifts. They're like, what's going on? Why is it so, are you arguing? They're like, we're not arguing. That's cooking.
All my friends. All my friends said that too. Why is everybody mad? And I'm like, mad? You don't know. This ain't mad. But I have to tell you though, I crave Italian wedding soup with the little meatballs and the pastina and I don't know how your family made it, but chicken. In fact, when I go back to Columbus in Thanksgiving, if you're listening, cousins, Presley, Tana, all of you, make me Aunt Carolyn's Italian wedding soup.
Ooh, and bring some back for Deborah.
And bring some back for Deborah Zara.
Yeah, right. Because people, my married name is Cobelt.
Yes.
Like, what do you mean you're Italian? I'm like, yes, I'm full-blooded, 100%. I've even done the DNA, and it's like 99.999. I'm like, well, what's the other 0.001?
Well, you know what, Deborah? You know what I'm afraid of? Having the Italian roots on both sides, I really want to do that DNA thing. But I see those commercials where the guy comes on and goes, all my life, I thought I was Spanish, and now I find out I'm Lithuanian. And I'm so afraid. I don't want that to happen. Nothing against the Lithuanians. I just want to make sure it'll come out that I'm Italian.
Honey, I'm pretty sure you are. And even if there's a drop of blood from somewhere else, nice to know.
There must be because the Northern Italians, I've got, blue eyes, and I don't have blonde hair at all in the least, but I do have light skin and blue eyes.
Yeah. So, in that Northern Italian region, I mean, there's lots of blending, but clearly
Germany, Austria, France. Yeah.
No, I want you to do it. We're going out later this week. I'm going to take a sample of your blood. I'm going to send it in myself.
No. So, I can't let you. I got to think about it.
All right. I'm being silly. But all right. So growing up, did you go to,
Catholic
families'
school.
Houses? Oh, yeah. No, I did too.
No, growing up, we loved. Do you know Sebastian Maniscalco, the comedian? Oh, Deborah. Deborah. When you are done today, you go home and you turn on, is it Netflix or HBO? And you watch all 5 of Sebastian Maniscalco's comedy specials. He's a very physical Italian comic, and he married this really pretty Jewish girl. And the jokes about blending the two families and his father and he have this amazingly wacky but loving relationship. He tells stories like, when we were kids, you say, hey, Dad, I want a dog. And he goes, dog, you want a dog? Go down the street and pet that one. We ain't getting no dog. All the kinds of things that the Italian families were, talking about in the way they disciplined. He says, I'm sitting in the living room watching cartoons when I'm 12 and my dad says, hey, get a job. I'm like, I'm 12. And he goes, I don't care. But that's the way we were. And you've got to watch. Deborah, when you watched him, you are going to personally hug me and thank me for changing your life. He is.
Wow.
He's very, very famous. I'm surprised you haven't heard of him, but trust me.
I am too.
He's really handsome. He looks just like my youngest brother. And he's very physical and he's so real.
You know what? I'm going to watch his work and then maybe I'll reach out to him to come on the Little Italy podcast. How fun would that be? And I'm going to tell him you sent me. Now, honestly, I hope I don't look at him and go, oh my God, of course I know who he is. Sometimes
you probably will. I mean, he's been on, Fallon and a million times. He's 5 series, 5 specials on, I think it's Netflix, just Maniscalco. Deborah, I sat on this couch by myself and binge watched all of these episodes and I was yelling out loud with laughter. It is an absolute delight. And if you watch it with someone who has any Italian heritage, it's all the better. or even Jewish heritage, because he talks about he talks about going to one of the Jewish services. I did look it up. Just look it up. And he's
I'll look it up.
You got to read literature for 2 hours. I'm like, literature? I'm starving. Where's the bread? It's like,
okay, I have the best idea, because I know we are going out this week. We should have dinner at my house, and we should actually watch some of the episodes.
That would be
talk
great.
about it later. We'll talk about it later. But I want to get back to going to the Italian markets and all that. Did you, as a kid, did you go to a lot of cousins' houses? Like, I swear,
all the time.
Every weekend, okay? It was either a graduation, a funeral, a wedding, a birthday party. And come on, with 80 or 90 cousins, imagine how many birthday parties in the morning.
First Holy Communion. No, but listen, that's what got me on the Sebastian Maniscalco. He talks about company. Like, back then the door rang, everybody jumped up. We got company. Get the cake, get the Sanka. I mean, because now when someone shows up, you get your AK-47 and, drop. He tells this whole thing about how fun it was to have company. We always had company. We were always going to someone's house, the Calatruglios, the Margellos, the DeSantises, the Fontanarosas. It was just so much fun, and the cousins and the friends and the experiences and the Christmas Eves where my grandpa, whom we called Popo, like he was this tough Roman, Abruzzo guy, right? And worked in the coal mines. And all the Italian guys, such, the testosterone, right? And the testadura, they would have these races to see, these competitions to see who was the strongest. My grandfather Popo would open bottles with his teeth, right? This is what the Italian guys did. And everybody would cheer. And my dad and my Uncle Johnny would have phone book ripping contests. I mean, to see all the Italian guys would come and go, feel this. It was so Italian, feel my muscle. I loved it.
As a little kid, I remember sitting there. We would go to this little place in New Jersey called the Peter Pan Diner. And it was loud. And I used to think, I was almost terrified, but I was truly curious about it. And I was quite little. I would study each and every one of them to the point where I knew which cigarettes that they smoked, right? Like Uncle Vito was my toughest uncle. And he would always be there, with the Pall Mall. So no, not right. What was the one with no
Lucky
filter?
Strike? I bet it was Lucky Strike.
Yeah. And I could tell
I
could tell each person's personality by the cigarettes that they smoked, and it was lovely and interesting. But if you're trying to make your way into the world, I just remember I knew it was loving, but it was loud and interesting. And like I say, when we go back, and we go back a lot actually to see my family. I love my family. I have great cousins. But as I said to my kids, it's shocking and jarring because they grew up here, not too many family members at all. And it was actually quiet. In a way, I feel badly for them because they missed out on all of that, growing up, and sort of somebody shows up at the door and out comes an eggplant. I used to say to my mother, where was that? Because it wasn't in the refrigerator. I think it was under her bed. But, they just showed up. Actually, they were in the basement, right? Because many Italian homes always had that second kitchen in the basement. I tapped into something. You too?
And in that big second kitchen in the basement was always a regulation pool table in my house, because my dad was a pool shark, and he taught me how to play. I was a really good pool player. I haven't played pool in years, but that was a big thing in our house. And in our basement we had regulation Las Vegas one-armed bandits. And I'd say to my dad, Dad, where do we get these? And he'd go, forget about it. But, my dad wasn't in the mob, but I have a feeling that some of my uncles who were in the bar and restaurant, that kind of thing business. I had, and in the produce import business and all that. So all the typical stuff that you'd see in The Sopranos. I don't have any direct knowledge, but it was cool because my brothers and I would play with these one bandits from.
Hey, look, Look at the opening of The Sopranos, the actual, opening credits, Tony's driving by, the meat markets and
Yeah,
whatever in Newark, New Jersey.
yeah,
And remember, I'm originally from New Jersey, even though my
yeah,
family moved to Florida when I was a teenager. And I recognized every last one of those markets. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
absolutely. That, yeah, we had a,
I've been in there. Yeah. So I hope, boy, do I get it. And I'm not sure what would go on in there or late at night in there, but we can only
who cares?
guess, right?
Hey, let
So
me ask
yeah.
you, are you gravy or sauce?
Oh,
Did your
okay.
family use spaghetti with gravy or spaghetti with sauce? Which term? In our house, it was always sauce.
I was just going to say it's sauce, and on Thanksgiving when you're serving gravy with your turkey, it's gravy. It was sauce, sauce.
Right, but
Oh my God,
a lot of Italians refer to the spaghetti sauce as gravy. It's like a running battle among Italian factions.
Oh no, for us it was sauce, and
Yeah.
you have to remember my family is from the southern region. We're from Avellino, Montecozani, San Barbaro, which is just outside of Naples, a little quiet little mountain community. Not in Naples, but that's where my family, both sides, are from.
Yeah.
But all of this, all of the loud, all of the love, all of the dysfunction, clearly made Pat into who Pat is today.
Yeah.
Clearly, the University of Lalama, for being a reporter, right? I mean, let's face it, you've got to be ready for anything, for any meatball that comes your way, literally.
Yep, and
Am
I
I right
am.
about that?
I
Yeah.
am. I travel alone all the time and drive into tiny towns and not knowing a soul and digging up information about in fact, I'm going to Nashville next week for a few days.
Oh,
I'm really excited about that because I love music, as you know. But some of my time I have to drive to Murfreesboro, Smyrna, Tennessee, and I'll be doing that on my own, just digging for stories. And I covered the LA riots, got shot at, been harassed by gangbangers while I've been live on TV. But it is what it is. If you choose this business, then you're a truth seeker. And I'll
yeah.
tell you, Deborah, what my mantra was. The minute I graduated from college and got my first job, I said, all the hard work I had to do working my way through college, which I did, nobody helped me, is going to be spent giving my viewers enough factual information that they can make their own good decisions about what's best for them.
Well,
Now
that's the way
it's
we
the
were.
media that's telling you how to live and how to act and what's right and wrong. And that's just not right to me. Go back
Well,
to
that's the
giving
way.
people factual information, no censorship allowed, factual, do your job, report facts, let the viewer say, oh, okay, then that's going to help me decide who I'm going to vote for the next election. Or, if a particular company is fraudulent or whatever, that's what I still believe in. And with my crime reporting, which has been my mainstay, the crime reporting is helping people. A lot of people think that crime journalists, how salacious, like one of my stepsons says, oh, it's like, you're just like capitalizing off a murder. Well, I think a lot of crime shows do, and I hate that. But at 2020, clearly that's not what we're doing. And I still believe that what I do by covering cases is help people understand how the criminal justice system works, how not to say opening arguments like so many journalists do. It's opening statements, ladies and gentlemen. It's not opening arguments. I'm
You're
being
right.
kidding, but the jury system, how lawyers, how it's like a chess game in the courtroom, and how evidence works. And I do think that I've been able to have a lot of people have told me I've learned so much because I am too ADD to have gone through law school. Broadcast journalism, because I love to talk, was perfect for me. So I carved out this niche where I go sit in trials and I cover them, and I've cornered this niche where I come out of the courtroom and give a live shot and tell people what they need to know without the legalese in a way that they can understand it. And that's really important to me. And I think everyone inside the criminal justice system is important, including the defendant, including the accused. The accused deserves a fair trial. So all this pre-trial pontificating I see, I think, can be harmful and sway jury pools. So, I have a lot of thoughts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, you're truly, Pat, and I don't just say this lightly, you're one of the finest journalists
Thank you.
out there.
Thank
And I
you.
think it's because you were trained in a time where that mattered. It's not like it doesn't matter now, but it's a little bit of anything goes,
It
and you
matters
really
a
have to.
lot less, but I'm still
Yeah,
fighting the good fight, and so are you, you know. So
yeah, no, absolutely. You talked about court. You talked about trials. That's where you met your husband, Tony.
yes.
Can we talk about Tony,
All
please?
right. Okay. So I this is a I don't know what this is about, but in my family, I had a lot of responsibility growing up. I
Yeah, yeah.
basically took care of my three brothers. I cleaned the house. I had too much. They gave me too much responsibility because there was a lot of trauma and drama going on. And so I kind of carried the weight. I was like the matriarch at 10. And you know, I really didn't have any interest in getting married. I love kids. I'm the best aunt ever. Kids are drawn to me. I'm drawn to them. But I felt, because I see so much bad parenting, right? I gave up my right to have a child by making the decision not to, because I feel, and I still feel this day, parenting is the most important role on the planet.
Yeah.
And we're not allowed to talk about parenting, but I think parenting is 90% of our problems. And that across the board, race, color, creed, religion, socioeconomic status, if you are not nurturing your children, then you're contributing to the problem in this society, right? And I believe that. And I just felt that I was not going to be the kind of person who could devote the time that I felt a human being that I created deserved. So I I wanted to travel. I lived in Boston, Chicago, LA, Detroit, San Francisco. I just wanted to focus on my career and hug and kiss and play with my friends' kids. And that worked out very well for me. And I didn't want to get married. People think, oh, you were such a tough chick. You just, you know, you were too busy with your career. No, there's a lot of married women who are successful journalists. I think deep inside, I just didn't want the response. It was too much. It was too much.
It's
I
a
know
lot.
I'm an oddball. So anyway, cutting to the chase here. In 1987, I moved here from Chicago. And I'm sitting and I got sent to a trial in Orange County. The defendant's name was Fat Bobby Paduano, right? Thick neck, broad, just straight out of Godfather, right? And I'm waiting for the attorney. We're all waiting for the attorney to show up, and the doors open, and in walks this tall, black-haired, absolutely drop dead, gorgeous criminal defense attorney. And it wasn't just his looks. I see a lot of good-looking guys. He walks up with his big suitcase, and he looks at me, and we both did like a double take. And it was like in The Godfather when Michael Corleone meets Apolloni, and he says, "I got struck by the thunderbolt." We both did. It was just like a zzz, and it was not purely just, you know, wow, hot guy. So during the break in the case and the recess, he comes up to me. And he goes, hi, I'm Anthony Brooklier, and I'm going to marry you someday. And I just laughed at him. I said, who the hell do you think you are? I said, I'm not one of these like gaga girls out here in LA looking for a man. I'm tough. I'm a veteran investigative journalist, and BS to you, right? I just basically kind of laughingly told him off. He goes, no, I'm serious. You're going to see, right? So I thought he was so handsome, though. I have to tell you, I was like, woo! And I just really did feel something special about him. 12 years went by. I would see him in court. He'd give me special, like he was Heidi Fleiss's attorney. He'd set up special interviews. He was Suge Knight, Rick James, Billy Preston, half of Guns N' Roses. He was a big shot. And he would always see me and always be so sweet to me, but nothing ever happened. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, he's hooked up, right? So I lose track of him. 1999, 12 years later, I'm working at Hard Copy, and my executive producer says, hey, we should do something with Heidi Fleiss. I forgot what the connection was, but I said, oh, I know his attorney. I haven't talked to him in years, but I know him. And they said, well, call him and see if we can get an interview with her. I think because another madam had gotten... Baby Doll Gibson had gotten arrested. She was another madam. So we were going to do a follow-up with Heidi. So I called him up, and he goes, hey, Lalama, how you doing? How you doing? No, he's Sicilian. His real last name was Brooklier, but they Americanized it to Brooklier. And he goes, yeah, let's talk about Heidi. Meet me for lunch. And it was down at a great old restaurant called La Dome on the Sunset Strip. Big music industry hangout. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought, oh, he invited me to lunch, but he probably just wants to catch up. So we go to lunch. We talk about Heidi for 2 seconds. And then he goes, yeah, okay, now let's talk about the important stuff. I said, what important stuff? And he goes, remember what I said to you 12 years ago in an Orange County courtroom hallway? And I said, before I could answer, he said, I told you I was going to marry you, and I meant it then. I never stopped meaning it. I used to watch you on TV for 12 years and say, someday it's going to be, the time's going to be right. He said, I don't know where you stand, but that's still how I feel. And we were together from that day forward for 18 years. I still wouldn't marry until 2010, but I finally did.
Wow, that long. I didn't realize that.
He kept asking, and no, finally in 2010, he said, come on. It was almost like he was giving me this ultimatum. He really wanted to be married. And
yeah,
I said, all right,
he really wanted
married. Huh?
He really wanted to be married to you. That's it. You said he really wanted to be married, but
I raised, and by the way, I got two sons in the equation. Nick and Chris are 4 and 6. I met them, and I swooped in, and I was a pretty darn good mom. I was tough, but I was fun. I took them to Rolling Stone shows and James Brown shows and taught them a lot about music. The older one got a broadcast journalism degree and worked for CBS in San Francisco for a while. So I had a lot of influence on these kids. But but it's when he told me in 2010, I said, all right. I'll marry you under 2 conditions. Number 1, don't make me plan anything. I ain't planning. Just tell me where to show up and what time, right? And number 2, just give me a great big bottle of Tito's. Tito's vodka. Sure enough, I get the big bottle of Tito's. And he tells me to show up in courtroom. It was in the presiding judge of LA Superior Court's courtroom. And the judge, he was a friend of both of ours. And now, of course, I can't remember his last name, Judge David. But anyway, so the friends and family came, 20 people. And I shook through the whole thing. And as a joke, when the judge asked me if I took Tony to be my lawful wedded husband, I said, I plead no contest.
That's beautiful. Oh, yeah. And you had
my husband was the love of my life. He was a great attorney, and he his name is on the wall of the criminal courts downtown in the Hall of Fame. Just one of the most classy, brilliant, funny, looked and sang like Elvis. Well, you met him. You know.
Oh, he was a beautiful, beautiful man. If you want to briefly, because we're actually going to run out of time.
Okay.
Talk about the
chase. Yes, he took his own life in 2016, and we can talk about that on another podcast. But he was a lovely, lovely man who had a hard time dealing with his gangster father's past, which is really a movie. So there we go. How about leaving that?
Well, but I'd really like to, address a little bit about the grief of someone who takes their life. And I think you knew in your heart that might happen because he was grieving himself. Yes. And I just think it is tragic. And when I even think about it, it really shakes me. Because I remember not even knowing about it until a little after it happened. And I was sick. We were both sick. If you want,
how much time do I have?
You have a few minutes, and you go ahead. I mean, we'd like to hear about it.
I'll give you the abridged version. I talk very openly about mental health because it is so important, and I want to carry my husband's legacy forward to show people that beautiful, beautiful people can be in so much pain. You think it's the most selfish thing in the world, but you understand that when they start thinking that they're just a burden to the world, they justify it. My husband's father ran the Italian mob. You can look him up. Dominic Brooklier, a.k.a. Jimmy Ragazzi. He was the Il Capo out here, right? He has a long history. My husband was not in the mob. Neither were his 2 brothers. My husband went to law school and worked for the state attorney when he first got out of law school, and was married with 2 little kids, 2 older kids who were much older when I got together with Tony. And one day his father came knocking on his door. You got to remember, Tony watched his father get arrested and go to prison a couple of times in his childhood. That's traumatic enough. Okay. Yeah. To know that your father, I don't care how much TV and media glamorize it, it is a painful thing to have the realization that your father is a lawbreaker and potentially and possibly a killer, right? And his father was also abusive, which I didn't learn until Tony was dead. My husband would never say that to me. But anyway, so his father ran the mob. His father got indicted in one of the first and largest RICO cases in Southern California history. And there were like 8 co-defendants, Jimmy the Weasel Fraudiano, a lot of names that people who follow the mob would recognize. So he comes to my husband's home, drives up to my husband's home in the middle of the night, knocks on the door and says, "Oh, I got indicted. You're going to represent me." And when I heard this, I never knew Dominic. He died before I met him. When my husband told me this, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? And nobody in your family said, no, you're not doing it. So he was indicted on contract murder. I mean, lots of serious charges, right? And my husband said to me, no, I had to. It was my duty. I said, it was not your duty. That is a crappy thing to do to your son. And all mobsters are sociopaths anyway. And so my husband did his duty and represented, actually got him acquitted of contract murder. My husband was a young attorney and it made big headlines. You can imagine. Son represents mobster father. Oh yeah, that's great. Well, forget about the fact that you devastated my husband in this position. My husband didn't win every count. My father-in-law went to federal prison and just a few months later died in federal prison. My husband carried that burden with him all his life. And I said, Tony, your father didn't die because of you. Your father died because he was a gangster. He was a killer. He was bipolar. He was an alcoholic, and he smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. What do you want? Are you kidding me? You did the best thing a son could do for this guy. My husband could never drop that. And what he did for many, many years, he sustained it by being a great, great, great attorney. But over time, when his second oldest son took his life in 2015, that book ended. My husband now feels that he killed his father and was responsible for his son's death, feeling he didn't do a good job as a father, which is so misguided, but it's what my husband did to himself. So almost 1 year after my oldest stepson died, Tony Jr., I found my husband dead. But there was a lot leading up to that. I anticipated it. And that's the story. And there's so much more to it than just dropping these highlights here. It's so much more complicated. But just to know he was the loveliest man and he loved me so much. And
it's also a lot about grief and handling grief. And you're right. It's a different story for a different time and getting help and knowing when someone, knowing to reach for help, knowing if someone in your family, you can reach them to get them help.
Yes.
I think you're right. He carried around tremendous guilt for much of his life, but he also left feeling that giving, I don't even know what to say. What can I say?
Listen, you don't have to say anything. I've gone over it in my mind. I have moved on. I know he's watching. I actually think that the great success that I've had since his death is somehow, I'm not a believer in this kind of stuff, but I really do think he's like, I'm sorry, you were there for me through the darkest hour at my own. Sometimes I had to let my career take not a backseat, but I wasn't 100%. And I took care of the kids through the whole thing. And I think I'm blessed with this even greater career than I ever had right now. So, and then someday I'll tell you the story of my lunch with Dorothy Lucy and Anna Garcia and a message from Tony from above.
Oh, no, you have to tell me off camera. We have about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So I know that you love Mick Jagger.
Yeah, and the Rolling Stones, yeah.
Yeah, Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger, I think. Now, wait, you have or have not met him and covered him?
Okay, so I'll just tell you quickly. I have met Ronnie Wood. I've met Bill Wyman. I do not want to meet Mick and Keith. This is something that's very hard for me to explain to people. Since I was 9 years old, I have worshiped the Rolling Stones. I've probably seen 30 to 40 shows, maybe even more over the years. My first one, I was still in high school. And my brother took me up to the Akron Rubber Bowl. Stevie Wonder opened.
Wow.
And I worship them. All of their music speaks to me.
Yeah.
in ways that I can't explain. I've always had that edgier side. So those those songs like Paint It Black and Get Off My Cloud and 19th Nervous Breakdown from way back, they're very edgy songs that most girly girls, wouldn't like. And I'm not a girly girl, but I am that kind of hardcore person, and they just speak to me. They also have a very soft edge too. Wild Horses.
Yeah.
But I worship them. I can't explain it. And I fear that if I ever met Mick or Keith, it would all be, I want to keep it this way.
You want to?
I'll show you. I'll show you very quickly. This was done by Ronnie Wood.
Wow!
And that's something that's signed and numbered. He's a really great painter. And in here, this is going to be a little pornographic, but it's the famed Sticky Fingers album signed. So I have a lot of Rolling Stones stuff all over the place. You see Mick in the background here. Yes, I worship the Stones. They just dropped a new album. Their song with Lady Gaga, The Sweet Sounds of Heaven, is absolutely phenomenal, with Stevie Wonder, speaking up, playing on it. It's fantastic. These
absolutely.
Guys, when they die, I'll be ready to die. I can't live in a world without the Rolling Stones.
Oh, and on that, I guess we'll just end our interview. You are so delightful.
You too.
I'm giving you 10 seconds. Anything you'd like to tell our Italian-American audience listening? Go ahead.
My grandparents kissed the ground of the United States of America when they arrived here. They had nothing. They asked for nothing, but they wanted to be American. And I am so proud of that. And I am carrying that legacy.
Beautiful. Pat Lalama, award-winning journalist and my friend. Love you back. Looking forward to seeing you this week. Honest to God, I think we need to watch some of those episodes of your favorite comedian.
That would be the most.
Wouldn't that be fun?
The most fun night ever. Yes.
For two girls who can't cook well, we're gonna have to order. So anyway, I have some of my very favorite Italian restaurants on standby. So we'll talk about that later. But Pat Lalama, thank you for joining us. It has been a delight. You are truly such a talented and remarkable journalist. Wow. You brought us so much through the years. You're beautiful, and you've been through a lot. And just like Nunzio said, you can do anything that you set your mind to. And
I love you, Deborah.
That.
We're kindred spirits, my friend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
See you later.
Have me on again.
Yeah, I will. We'll talk. There's so much we could talk about. But everybody, you could find our interview with Pat Lalama on all video platforms. That would be YouTube, Facebook. Then we put everything on Instagram. We'll put it on TikTok. And then, of course, the audio version of Deborah Colbert Live and Little Italy podcast. Wherever you get your audio podcast, just put me in there, our names, and you will find our interview with Pat Lalama. Thank you so much for joining us. Please like and subscribe to our show. Appreciate it very much. Much love to Pat. See you later on this week.
Grazie, Bella. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.